Keanu Reeves steps into a luxurious restaurant nestled in the heart of the city, his attire a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings. Dressed in simple, slightly wrinkled clothes, he looks as though he has just wrapped up an ordinary day. Moving with quiet confidence, he selects a discreet table, seemingly aiming to go unnoticed. The soft glow of crystal chandeliers bathes the space in warm light, reflecting off polished surfaces and illuminating the refined elegance of the establishment. Before he even has the chance to place an order, a waitress strides towards him, her posture rigid with arrogance. She scans him from head to toe with an unmistakable look of disdain. Her voice drips with irony as she sneers. "Are you sure you can afford to be here?" The remark is sharp and loud enough to reach the ears of nearby diners, eliciting a few amused chuckles. However, what unfolds next not only stuns everyone in the restaurant but also exposes a truth that changes everything. Before diving deeper into this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy narratives like this, subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. we have another special story just for you. The Lumiere restaurant was more than just a place to dine, it was a beacon of sophistication in Beverly Hills. Situated on one of the city's most prestigious avenues, its wide windows framed a picturesque view of neon-lit streets, where luxury cars glided along at a leisurely pace. Inside, every detail was meticulously curated to impress. From the gleaming marble floors to the golden accents adorning the walls, Lumiere was an exclusive destination for those who craved both admiration and attention. Ashley, one of Lumiere's most seasoned waitresses, moved with practiced grace through the restaurant. Her uniform, perfectly tailored, exuded professionalism, while her tightly town bun reinforced her image of poise and efficiency. To her, working at Lumiere wasn't just a job, it was a status symbol, something she proudly mentioned whenever she had the chance. However, Ashley also possessed an inflated sense of pride that often teetered on arrogance. She had a habit of sizing up patrons the moment they walked in, mentally placing them into categories based on their attire, demeanor, and overall presence. "Some people simply don't belong here," she often thought to herself. The restaurant's grand glass doors swung open smoothly, allowing a man to step inside. His outfit was a stark deviation from the usual clientele. A pair of worn-out jeans, a simple shirt, and a jacket that, while comfortable, bore no signs of luxury branding. His presence was understated, almost invisible, as he moved with calm confidence towards the reception desk. Keanu Reeves had never been one to flaunt his wealth. Despite being one of Hollywood's most recognizable stars, his quiet and reserved nature set him apart from the ostentatious glamour of Beverly Hills. In this moment, to the untrained eye, he was just another ordinary customer. Ashley, engaged in conversation with a colleague about a VIP reservation, caught sight of Keanu from the corner of her eye. Her conversation halted abruptly and she turned her full attention to him. Her gaze hardened, filled with barely concealed disdain as she took in his appearance. He looked nothing like the type of guest Lumiere typically catered to. Without bothering to mask her reaction, she tilted her head slightly, her eyes sweeping over him in a slow, scrutinizing once-over. Her gaze lingered disapprovingly on his scuffed boots before she forced a tight-lipped smile that vanished just as quickly as it appeared. "Good evening," she greeted, her tone as dry as her expression. "How can I help you?" "I'd like a table, please," Keanu replied, his voice polite and composed. Ashley arched a perfectly groomed eyebrow as if she had just heard something absurd. Her expression seemed to silently ask, "How dare he?" Crossing her arms, her smile faded entirely. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" she asked, her tone laced with condescension. "This is a very exclusive restaurant." Keanu remained unfazed, his demeanor unwavering. "Yes, this is the place," he affirmed calmly. Ashley let out a short, incredulous laugh, shaking her head. "All right, just a moment, I need to check something." Without another word, she turned on her heel and strode towards the reception desk, making no effort to disguise her irritation. Upon reaching the reservation system, she exaggeratedly typed in his name, a smug expression forming as she anticipated what she already suspected. No reservation under Keanu Reeves. Rolling her eyes, she let out a frustrated sigh before returning to the dining area, her irritation now fully visible. "As I thought," she announced, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You don't have a reservation." She tapped her manicured nails against the reception desk before adding, "We do have a few tables available, but just so you're aware, this isn't a casual dining spot." Keanu remained composed, offering a calm nod. "I'd still like to dine here," he responded, unaffected by her attitude. Ashley sighed dramatically, grabbing a menu with an abrupt motion. "All right then, follow me," she instructed, her voice devoid of warmth. She led him through the grand dining hall with brisk mechanical steps, making no effort to ensure he was keeping up. Instead of seating him in the central area, where the golden light from the chandeliers cast a warm, inviting glow, she guided him towards the farthest, most unappealing corner of the restaurant. The table was near the kitchen, where the clatter of dishes and the muffled chatter of the staff disrupted the otherwise refined ambience. It was a spot rarely used for guests, one meant more for overflow seating or discreetly placing guests who didn't quite fit the restaurant's usual aesthetic. Reaching the table, Ashley carelessly dropped the menu in front of him with an audible thud. "Here you go," she said, in an artificially sweet tone. "I think this table will suit you. It's more private." Keanu glanced at the table, then at Ashley, his serene expression unwavering. "Thank you," he said simply. Ashley narrowed her eyes slightly, scrutinizing him as though trying to decipher whether he was being sarcastic or genuinely oblivious. As she turned to leave, she muttered under her breath, loud enough for a nearby couple to hear, "He won't last 5 minutes here. Bet he'll leave as soon as he sees the menu." Across the restaurant, Keanu calmly opened the menu, his eyes scanning the options at a leisurely pace. The live music continued to play softly in the background, the clinking of glasses and quiet murmurs of conversation filling the space. Despite the apparent hostility he had been met with, his posture remained completely at ease. From the other side of the dining hall, Ashley watched him closely, a smug smile tugging at the corner of her lips. She was certain that in just a few moments he would ask for the check and disappear, embarrassed by the prices and the judgmental stares around him. What she didn't realize, however, was that Keanu Reeves was about to turn the situation on its head in a way no one in that restaurant could have anticipated. Ashley smirks, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're welcome," she says, feigning politeness. "Just so you know, we usually reserve these tables for special cases, but since we're not fully booked tonight, I suppose you can have it." Without waiting for a response, she spins on her heels and walks away, leaving Keanu alone at the poorly placed table. When Ashley returns to take his order, her demeanor is even more condescending. She pulls out her notepad with an exaggerated motion, tapping the pen against it impatiently. With a cold glance, she asks, "Have you decided what you'd like, or would you prefer a recommendation?" Her voice is void of warmth, her words edged with boredom. Keanu glances at the menu calmly and without hesitation points to one of the most expensive main courses. "I'd like to try this one." Ashley barely contains a laugh, covering her mouth with one hand as if trying to suppress an amused scoff. "Oh, of course," she says mockingly. "The Filet de Rossini, a true classic." Then her tone turns sharper, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Just to confirm, sir, you do realize this dish costs $350, right?" Keanu nods, his expression unchanged. "Yes, it sounds wonderful." Ashley tilts her head, a malicious smile forming on her lips. "All right, then. Just to make sure there are no misunderstandings later, I suggest you double-check the prices. We wouldn't want anyone to have any unpleasant surprises." Keanu remains utterly composed, which seems to unsettle her. "I'm certain," he responds, his tone unwavering. Ashley lets out an exaggerated sigh, as if she's doing him a great favor by taking his order. Scribbling it down with a dramatic flourish, she mutters, "Very well, as you wish." But just so you know, our chef prefers dishes like this to be enjoyed by those who truly appreciate fine dining. I hope it meets your expectations." She turns to leave, but suddenly stops, looking over her shoulder with a smirk. "Oh, and one more thing. The minimum tip expected here is 20%. Keep that in mind while you enjoy." Without waiting for a response, she walks away. As Keanu waits for his meal, he remains unbothered, as if completely immune to the hostility Ashley attempts to provoke. He glances around the restaurant, admiring the lavish decor and the elegant notes of the pianist's performance. The atmosphere is refined, sophisticated, yet tainted by Ashley's disdainful treatment. When the appetizer finally arrives, Ashley sets the plate down with an unnecessary amount of force, causing it to slide slightly across the table. "Here's your appetizer," she says with a smirk. "I hope you enjoy it, or at least know what you're eating." Keanu remains unfazed. "Thank you," he says politely. Ashley leans in slightly, as if trying to gauge his reaction, or perhaps to provoke one. "You know, a lot of customers who order this dish end up not liking it. It's not exactly mainstream," she adds with a condescending chuckle. "But I think you'll do just fine. Good luck." Keanu looks at her, his calm expression unwavering. "It looks excellent. Thank you for your attention." Ashley clenches her jaw in frustration. Unable to elicit any irritation from him, she huffs and turns away, muttering something under her breath as she approaches a coworker. "That guy won't even make it to the main course. He's going to ask for the check as soon as he sees the bill." Meanwhile, Keanu leisurely enjoys his appetizer. Across the room, Ashley keeps glancing at him with crossed arms and a smug expression. She watches him closely, searching for any sign of discomfort or hesitation. "I bet he's going to ask for tap water," she whispers to another staff member, rolling her eyes. These types always do. The staff member shifts uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. However, someone else is watching, an elderly gentleman seated at a nearby table. Dressed in a navy blue suit, his silver hair neatly combed, he has been observing the entire exchange with quiet curiosity. Lifting his wine glass slightly, he offers a silent toast in Keanu's direction. Keanu, noticing the gesture, nods and offers a small smile in return. Dinner is only just beginning, but Ashley's behavior is about to attract the wrong kind of attention. Instead of promptly delivering Keanu's order to the kitchen, Ashley deliberately delays it, determined to make him regret his choice. She prioritizes other guests instead, lingering at the tables of wealthy patrons. She stops to chat with an elegant couple, laughing a little too loudly at a joke. She delivers a cocktail to a table that isn't even hers. Meanwhile, Keanu waits, unbothered. Ashley continues to ignore him. Every time she passes his table, she quickens her pace, pretending to be busy. If he looks in her direction, she avoids his gaze, making it clear she has no intention of hurrying his meal. Eventually, Keanu is approached by the elderly gentleman who had been watching from across the room. The man walks over, his steps measured, his expression warm. "Good evening, young man," he greets, his voice kind yet firm. "I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I've noticed that you've been overlooked." Keanu meets his gaze and smiles. "Good evening. Don't worry, it's all fine." The elderly man chuckles softly, then leans in slightly. "You know," he says in a lower voice, "sometimes being treated like this is a test of patience. But I must say your composure is quite admirable." Before Keanu can respond, Ashley appears suddenly, her presence sharp and unwelcome. "Sir, can I help you with something?" she asks the elderly man, her tone notably more refined but still carrying an undertone of authority. "I wouldn't want you to disturb our customer." The elderly man narrows his eyes slightly but remains composed. "Don't worry, miss. I was simply greeting this gentleman here. It's rare to meet someone so serene." Ashley exhales loudly, clearly impatient. "Well, perhaps you should return to your table and enjoy your dinner," she says, her fake smile slipping. Keanu observes the interaction, his expression thoughtful yet unreadable. He turns to the elderly man with a polite nod. "Thank you for coming over. It was a pleasure speaking with you." The man nods in return, but before leaving casts one last glance at Ashley, a look of subtle disapproval. Ashley, however, remains indifferent, brushing off his scrutiny as if it doesn't matter. When she finally decides to bring Keanu's main course, she makes a point of dragging out the process even further. First, she stops by the kitchen but doesn't place the order right away. Instead, she lingers, chatting with the chefs and laughing at an unrelated joke. The dish is finally prepared, but she leaves it under the warming lamp while she tends to other tables. She takes her time, making it clear that Keanu is her lowest priority. By the time she finally picks up his dish, she makes no effort to hide her irritation. She places the plate down with a careless thud, her lips curving into a smug smirk. "Here's your meal," she says, her voice tinged with mock sweetness. "I do hope it's up to your standards." Ashley placed the plate down with an exaggerated flourish, her voice dripping with irony. "Here's your order. I hope you enjoy it," she said with a smirk. "Oh, and if it's not to your liking, please let us know. We can always adjust to something more affordable." Keanu met her gaze with the same calm demeanor as before, completely unbothered by her remark. "It looks excellent. Thank you." Ashley's smile curled cynically as she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough for him to hear. "Are you sure? It's a very sophisticated dish. It might be difficult for someone who isn't used to this kind of cuisine." Keanu remained composed, his voice steady. "I'm sure. Thank you for your concern." Frustrated by her inability to provoke any reaction from him, Ashley huffed and turned away sharply. At the bar, she leaned against the counter speaking to a coworker who was visibly uncomfortable with her constant remarks. "He's pretending to be polite, but it's obvious he's uncomfortable," she scoffed, placing an empty glass on the counter. "I bet he doesn't even know what he's eating. It's always the same with these types. They come here trying to feel important, but they just end up embarrassing themselves." Her coworker forced a polite smile, shifting uncomfortably. "Maybe he just wants to have dinner, Ashley. Maybe we should treat him like any other customer." Ashley stared at him, incredulous. "Like any other customer?" She let out a laugh. "Did you see the boots he's wearing? He doesn't belong here, and frankly, if he can't handle it, he shouldn't have even walked through the door." Meanwhile, across the dining room, a couple who had been observing the scene whispered to each other. "She's awful," the woman murmured, shaking her head. "He's being so polite, but she keeps trying to humiliate him." "I agree," the man replied, his brow furrowed. "It's disgraceful. I think we should say something to the manager." At his table, Keanu continued to eat at his own leisurely pace, showing no sign of irritation. He noticed the sympathetic glances from other diners but remained undisturbed, as if he were completely above the situation. When Ashley returned to clear his plate, her expression remained cold. "So, how was the dish?" she asked with a forced smile. "Did it meet your expectations?" Keanu looked her straight in the eyes and responded with unwavering politeness. "It was excellent, thank you. Please tell the chefs they did an impeccable job." Ashley's smile faltered slightly. She had expected a complaint, perhaps a comment about the service or the food, but Keanu had given her nothing to use against him. As she walked away, she muttered under her breath, loud enough for nearby patrons to hear, "He might be smiling now, but let's see if he still is when the bill comes." Keanu, still seated, observed the room with a faint smile. His expression was calm, but there was something in his gaze that suggested the moment to act was approaching. Ashley, growing increasingly frustrated, decided to escalate her provocations. After serving Keanu the coffee he had requested, she made sure to speak loud enough for several nearby tables to hear. "You know," she said to a colleague, casting a pointed glance at Keanu, "it's hard to maintain standards when just anyone thinks they can walk in." Her coworker, visibly uncomfortable, tried to change the subject, but Ashley continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "That's why we have a reservations policy. It helps us avoid situations like this." Several patrons began paying attention, some frowning in disapproval, others whispering among themselves. The couple who had been following the situation looked outraged. "This is outrageous," the woman muttered. "She's trying to humiliate him in public." At another table, the elderly man who had observed Keanu earlier took a sip of his wine, his expression darkening. "This has gone too far," he murmured under his breath. Despite the growing tension, Keanu remained seated, calm as ever. His unwavering composure only seemed to unsettle Ashley more as she now felt the weight of the other diner's eyes on her. A well-dressed woman seated 2 tables ahead commented to her companion, "He must be someone important to stay this calm. Anyone else would have left by now." "Or maybe he's just stronger than she realizes," the man replied, his gaze lingering on Keanu with curiosity. Determined to provoke a reaction, Ashley approached Keanu's table once more. Her smile was exaggerated, her words laced with mockery. "I hope you're enjoying your experience," she said, feigning politeness. "After all, it's always interesting to have different kinds of people here. It adds a unique touch to the atmosphere." Keanu fixed her with a steady gaze, his voice calm yet firm. "Different?" he asked. "Could you explain what you mean by that?" Ashley let out a short, nervous laugh, shifting slightly. "Oh, don't take it the wrong way," she said quickly. "It's just that, well, our clientele typically has a more traditional profile. It's rare to see someone with your style here." A hush fell over the room. Conversations stopped as nearby diners tuned into the exchange. Ashley seemed to bask in the attention, convinced she had the upper hand. Keanu remained silent for a moment, his gaze unwavering. His expression was firm, but there was no anger, only a quiet authority. Finally he spoke. "You're right," he said. "Perhaps I should handle this differently." Ashley blinked, confused. Before she could respond, the restaurant manager appeared, scanning the room and immediately sensing the tension. The moment his eyes landed on Keanu, his expression changed dramatically. He hurried over, completely ignoring Ashley. "Mr. Reeves," the manager exclaimed, his voice filled with respect. "I wasn't aware you were visiting us today. Please let me know how I can assist you." Ashley's face drained of color. She looked between the manager and Keanu, completely bewildered. Keanu held the manager's gaze for a moment before turning his attention back to Ashley. "Now," he said, his tone calm but commanding, "let's talk about how we treat people." The restaurant fell into stunned silence. All eyes were on their table, waiting to see what would happen next. The manager, a man of impeccable demeanor, was visibly shaken as he took in the situation. Ignoring Ashley entirely, he turned to Keanu, leaning slightly forward in a respectful posture. "Mr. Reeves, I deeply apologize for any oversight," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "It's an honor to have you with us this evening. Please allow me to personally ensure that your experience here is exceptional." Ashley, who had been so sure she was in control of the situation, now stood frozen in place. Her mind raced as she struggled to process what was happening. "Mr. Reeves? He knows him? What's going on?" Keanu glanced at the manager with a small, knowing smile. "Thank you, but there's no need to worry. I'm fine. I'd just like to have a brief conversation with your staff, if that's not a problem." The manager's expression darkened slightly, sensing that something was very wrong. "Of course, Mr. Reeves, whatever you need." He then cast a sharp, reproachful glance at Ashley, who stood beside them, pale and visibly uncomfortable. The tables had turned, and now it was time for a lesson. Ashley stammered, her voice faltering as she desperately tried to salvage the situation. I didn't know. I thought—" The manager cut her off sharply, his voice firm and unwavering. "Thought what, Ashley? That this customer, who happens to be one of the owners of this restaurant, didn't deserve the same respect as anyone else?" His tone was low, but it carried a weight that drained the last bit of color from Ashley's face. She struggled to find a defense, but every possible excuse crumbled before it even left her lips. He didn't say who he was, and he looked She stopped, realizing that finishing that sentence would only seal her fate. Keanu, who had remained silent up to this moment, finally spoke. His voice was calm, yet its resonance filled the room. There is no need to state who I am, to be treated with dignity. Frankly, it shouldn't matter. Everyone who walks through these doors, regardless of their appearance, should be welcomed with respect. The entire dining room was captivated, murmurs rippling through the crowd as patrons absorbed the shocking revelation. Keanu Reeves wasn't just a guest, but one of the owners of Lumiere. The couple who had been following the situation exchanged pleased glances, while the elderly man gave a discreet nod of approval. A man at a nearby table whispered to his wife, "I knew there was something different about him. He has a presence that's impossible to ignore." His wife nodded, watching Keanu with admiration. "And look at how he's handling it, with such grace. I hope she learned something from this." The energy in the restaurant shifted. Some diners seemed ashamed that they hadn't intervened earlier, while others watched in silence, waiting to see how the situation would unfold. The manager turned back to Ashley, his expression a mix of frustration and restraint. "Ashley, I expect a detailed explanation of your behavior after your shift. For now, leave this table and stay away from it. I'll be handling this personally." Ashley opened her mouth as if to protest, but the manager's resolute gaze silenced her. With a sharp nod, she turned on her heel and hurried away, her face burning with humiliation as she avoided the judgmental stares of the other patrons. Keanu took a deep breath and rose from his seat. The room fell silent once more, all eyes fixed on him. With a composed yet authoritative tone, he addressed the diners. "This restaurant was founded on the idea that everyone should feel welcome, no matter how they dress or where they come from. Unfortunately, that was not the case today. But I believe we can all learn from this." His words hung in the air, sinking deep into the minds of those present. Even the manager, who was clearly embarrassed by the incident, looked at Keanu with a mix of admiration and unease. Keanu then turned to him and added, "I'd like to meet with the entire team after service. There are some important matters we need to discuss." The manager nodded immediately. "Of course, Mr. Reeves. It will be done, and again, I sincerely apologize for what happened tonight." Keanu returned to his seat as the restaurant slowly resumed its normal rhythm. Yet the night's events remained on everyone's lips, whispered between courses and stolen glances. Later that evening, after the last guests had left, the staff of Lumiere gathered in the now empty dining room. A heavy silence filled the space as Keanu stood at the center, his presence commanding yet composed. He let his gaze pass over each member of the team, making sure to meet their eyes. "We all make mistakes," he began, his voice steady and resonant, "but what truly matters is what we do after those mistakes. Tonight, we witnessed a problem that goes beyond poor service. We saw the consequences of snap judgments, hidden biases, and a lack of empathy. But I want you to understand this is not a condemnation, it's an opportunity." He let the words settle before continuing. His gaze eventually found Ashley, who was seated at the back of the room. Her eyes were red, filled with remorse and shame. "Ashley," he said, his tone firm but not unkind, "I know what happened today was a mistake, and mistakes can be corrected if there is genuine effort and a willingness to learn. What you choose to do next will define who you are." Ashley hesitated before finally lifting her head. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I never thought about it that way before," she admitted. "I was so focused on the restaurant's image, on maintaining standards, that I forgot what really matters. I forgot that every person has value, no matter who they are or what they look like." She swallowed hard, wiping away a tear. "I promise, Mr. Reeves, I'll change." Keanu nodded, offering a small, encouraging smile. "That promise isn't to me, Ashley. It's to yourself. True change comes from within, and if you ever need guidance along the way, I'll be here." Ashley nodded vigorously, relief and determination evident in her expression. Keanu turned back to the rest of the staff, his voice softening but still carrying purpose. In the world we live in, it's easy to judge people based on what we see, their clothes, their appearance, their cars, or their background. But I want you to consider something. What happens when we choose kindness instead? When we decide to look beyond appearances and recognize someone's humanity? He took a small step forward, placing his hands in his pockets. His tone became more reflective. We all carry struggles no one else can see. The person who seems out of place might be having the worst day of their life. The one who doesn't dress as expected might have accomplished more than you could imagine. And sometimes, the smallest act of kindness, the choice to treat someone with dignity, can change everything. The room remained silent, but something had shifted. Many of the staff members looked visibly moved, while others stared at the floor, lost in thought. Kindness isn't about grand gestures, it's about the small choices we make every day. It's about treating everyone we encounter as if they matter, because they do. And that, more than anything, defines the character of a place and of the people within it. The manager stepped forward, his voice filled with sincerity. "Mr. Reeves, your message is clear. We will do everything to ensure that Lumiere reflects the values you envisioned. Thank you for reminding us of that." Keanu simply nodded, offering a serene smile before stepping out of the restaurant. The streets of Beverly Hills glowed under the city lights. He paused briefly on the sidewalk, turning back to gaze at Lumiere's grand entrance. His soft smile returned as he reflected on the evening. What had transpired wasn't just about a restaurant. It wasn't just about a mistreated customer. It was about something far greater, the importance of creating spaces where people feel seen, heard, and valued. As he walked down the illuminated streets, Keanu thought about the message he hoped others would take from this night. If he could leave them with one lesson, it would be this. In a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind. True strength isn't found in judgment, but in acceptance. And above all, never forget. The small choices we make every day shape not only the world around us, but who we are as human beings. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience.